was not like other 13-year-old girls. While her classmates talked about music and fashion, she spent her days reading old books and learning dead languages. She wore thick glasses that were too big for her small face. Her hair was always messy because she forgot to brush it. Teachers called her gifted. Kids at school called her weird. Did not care. She had her books, and that was enough. Her father understood her better than anyone. He was which meant he studied ancient alien civilizations. He traveled across the galaxy, digging up ruins and reading symbols that no one else could understand. Had inherited his love for languages. By the age of 10, she could speak 9 different tongues. By 12, she had started learning script, the writing system of an alien empire that had died over 1,000 years ago. That summer, something unexpected happened. His usual babysitter got sick, and there was no one else to watch, so he made a decision that would change everything. He brought his daughter with him to Outpost 7. 7 was a small moon at the edge of known space. It was gray and cold, covered in rocks and dust. The Galactic Survey Corps had built a mining station there because they found traces of ancient technology beneath the surface. Was part of the team studying the ruins. The station was boring. There were no other children, no libraries, nothing to do. Spent most of her time in the small room she shared with her father, reading on her tablet. Sometimes she wandered through the metal hallways, looking at the workers who came and went. They were all adults with serious faces. None of them talked to her. One day took her down into the excavation tunnels. The tunnels were dark and narrow, carved into the rock by machines. Ancient walls covered in strange symbols appeared here and there. His heart beat fast with excitement. She ran her fingers over the carved lines, her mind already working to translate them. "Stay close," warned her. "Some areas are not safe." Nodded, but she was not really listening. Her eyes were fixed on a symbol she had never seen before. It looked like a door, but also like an eye. She took a picture with her tablet and kept walking. For the next few days, explored the tunnels whenever her father was busy. She was careful at first, staying in the areas that had been cleared. But slowly, she went deeper. The symbols on the walls became older and more complex. Her tablet struggled to translate them, but did not give up. She wrote notes, drew pictures, and compared everything to the text she had studied back home. On the 7th day, she found a tunnel that no one had marked on the maps. It was hidden behind a pile of fallen rocks, just big enough for a small girl to squeeze through. Knew she should tell someone. She knew it was dangerous. But the symbols on the rocks were calling to her. They were different from anything she had seen before. She squeezed through the gap. The tunnel on the other side was dark, turned on her tablet's light and kept walking. The air was cold and smelled like dust. Her footsteps echoed against the stone walls. She walked for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. Then the floor disappeared. Screamed as she fell. Her tablet flew from her hands. She hit something hard, then something soft, then rolled to a stop in complete darkness. Pain shot through her arm and her head. She lay still for a long moment, too scared to move. Slowly she opened her eyes. She was in a vast chamber, bigger than anything she had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that she could not see it. Faint blue light came from somewhere, casting strange shadows across the walls, and the walls were covered in shelves. Thousands and thousands of shelves, stretching in every direction, holding tablets and scrolls and objects she could not name. Forgot about her pain. She forgot about her fear. She sat up slowly, her eyes wide with wonder. She had found a library. Not just any library. This was something ancient, something impossible. The shelves were carved from black stone that seemed to drink in the light. The tablets on them glowed faintly, like they were still alive after all these years. Crystalline pillars rose from the floor, humming with a soft sound that could feel in her bones. She found her tablet lying nearby, cracked but still working. She picked it up and started scanning the nearest shelf. The translation software went crazy, trying to process symbols it had never seen. but could read them. They were old, older than anything in the official records, but she recognized the roots, the patterns, the way the symbols flowed into each other. Her hands shook as she touched a tablet and lifted it carefully. "Welcome to the library of," she whispered, reading the inscription on the wall. "Built in the year of the seventh star, may knowledge live forever." She had discovered the library of, the legendary repository that scholars had searched for across centuries, the place where the Empire had stored all their secrets before they vanished from the galaxy. And she, a nerdy 13-year-old girl who could not make friends, had found it by accident. She should have been scared. She should have called for help. But instead, she laughed. It was a small, quiet laugh that echoed through the endless halls of the ancient library. Then she started to explore. Lost track of time in the library. There were no windows, no clocks, nothing to tell her how long she had been wandering through the endless shelves. Her tablet battery showed half full, which meant she had been gone for at least 3 hours. Her father was probably worried. The whole station was probably looking for her. But she could not leave, not yet. Every shelf held something amazing. Star maps that showed galaxies she had never heard of. Medical tablets that described how to cure diseases humans had not yet discovered. History records that told the story of the Empire from its first day to its last. Walked slowly, scanning everything, her mind racing with possibilities. That had been incredible. Their empire had lasted for 10,000 years. They had built cities on 1,000 worlds, created machines that could think and feel, explored corners of the universe that no other species had ever reached. And then, suddenly, they had disappeared. No one knew why. No one knew how. One day they were the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. The next day they were gone. The answer had to be here somewhere, was sure of it. She walked deeper into the library. The shelves grew older, the symbols more complex. The blue light from the crystal pillars grew dimmer. Soon she was walking in near darkness, guided only by the faint glow of her tablet. Then she saw the door. It was made of metal, not stone. Black metal that seemed to absorb all light. Strange symbols covered its surface, different from anything else in the library. Stepped closer, her heart beating fast. She recognized some of the symbols: death, warning, forbidden, do not open. Knew she should turn back. Every rule she had ever learned told her to stay away. Her father's voice echoed in her head, warning her about dangerous alien technology. The symbols on the door screamed at her to leave. But there was another symbol, too. One that the others seemed to be protecting. It looked like a book with wings, surrounded by stars, and underneath it in old script was a single word. Truth. Reached out and touched the door. Nothing happened. She pushed gently, but it did not move. She looked more closely at the symbols around the frame. They were not just warnings. They were a lock, a puzzle that had to be solved before the door would open. Smiled, she was very good at puzzles. It took her 20 minutes to figure it out. The symbols had to be read in a specific order, following a pattern based on the old calendar. She pressed them one by one, holding her breath after each touch. When she pressed the last symbol, the door made a sound like a sigh. Then it opened. The room beyond was small and dark. A single pillar of light stood in the center, coming from a hole in the ceiling. And floating in that light, turning slowly like a leaf in water, was a book. Not a tablet or a scroll. An actual book with pages made of something that shimmered like oil on water. Colors moved across its surface, changing with every turn. It was the most beautiful thing had ever seen. She walked closer. The air in the room felt thick, like she was moving through water. Each step took more effort than the last, but she kept walking, her eyes fixed on the book. When she finally reached it, she saw the title written on the cover, "The Voice That Wakes the Stars." Knew she should not touch it. The warnings on the door had been very clear. Whatever this book was, they themselves had been afraid of it. They had locked it away in the deepest part of their most secret library. They had done everything they could to keep it hidden. But was lonely. She had always been lonely. Back on Earth, she had no friends. No one understood her love for old languages and dead civilizations. No one wanted to hear about the symbols she had translated or the puzzles she had solved. Even her father, who loved her more than anything, was always too busy with work to really listen. The book seemed to understand. As stood there, she could almost hear it whispering to her. Not words exactly, more like a feeling that said, "I have been waiting for you. I have a story to tell. Will you listen?" Reached out and took the book from the light. It was warm in her hands. The pages felt like silk against her fingers. She opened it to the first page and looked at the symbols there. They were more complex than anything she had ever seen, layers of meaning built on top of each other. But somehow she could read them. She took a deep breath. Then she read the first sentence aloud. The sound that came from her mouth was not any language she knew. It was older than any civilization in the galaxy. The words seemed to hang in the air, glowing faintly before fading away. The library shook, dropped the book and grabbed onto the pillar for support. The crystal lights flashed wildly, changing from blue to white to colors she had no names for. A sound like thunder rolled through the halls. Dust rained from the ceiling. And then she heard it, a voice coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, a voice that had not spoken in over 1,000 years. "Who dares invoke the resonance?" Picked up the book with shaking hands. She looked around the room, but there was no one there. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to, I was just reading." The lights stopped flashing, the shaking stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. "A child," the voice said, "a human child." Light gathered in the center of the room, forming a shape. A figure made of pure energy, with eyes that held the weight of centuries. Stood very still, clutching the book to her chest, and waited to find out if she was going to live or die. The figure of light stood before like a ghost from another age. She was tall, much taller than any human, with a body that seemed to be made of flowing silver and starlight. Her face was beautiful but strange, with eyes that had no color and no pupils. She looked at the way a scientist might look at a strange insect. "My name is," the figure said. Her voice echoed strangely, like it was coming from inside its own head. "I am the last guardian of the library of. I have slept for 1,230 years, and you have woken me." His legs felt weak. She wanted to sit down, but she was afraid to move. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I didn't know. I was just exploring and I found the book and I wanted to read it. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Floated closer. Her form flickered like a candle in the wind. "You read the words of binding. Do you understand what that means?" Shook her head. "You have tied yourself to the library's core. Your life force and the library's power are now connected. If you leave before the resonance is complete, you will die, and the library will die with you." The words hit like a punch to the stomach. She felt sick. Her eyes filled with tears that she tried very hard not to let fall. "What do I have to do?" she asked. "How do I complete the resonance?" Pointed at the book in his hands. "You must finish reading, every page, every word until the end. Only then will the bond be broken." "Okay," looked down at the book. It was not very thick, maybe 200 pages. "I can do that, I'm a fast reader." "You do not understand." His voice was cold. "The resonance is not a simple text. It is a living document. It changes as you read, adapting to your mind, pushing you to your limits. It requires a reader who can hold 17 different linguistic frameworks in their head at the same time. A reader who can maintain perfect emotional control while facing truths that have destroyed entire civilizations." Swallowed hard. "What happens if I fail?" "The same thing that happened to the who wrote it. They died, child. Every single one of them. The resonance was meant to be our greatest achievement. Instead, it became our death." The library was silent, looked at the book in her hands, then back at. 1,000 questions filled her mind, but one was more important than all the others. "What does the book do?" she asked. "Why did they write it?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "We reached the edge of the universe. We explored every star, every planet, every corner of known space, but we were not satisfied. We wanted more. We wanted to know what lay beyond." She raised her hand, and images appeared in the air. Saw strange shapes moving through darkness, things that were not stars or planets or anything she recognized. "We discovered that the universe is not alone. There are other dimensions, other realities, layered on top of ours like pages in a book. And in those dimensions, there are beings older than time itself. Beings with power beyond imagination." Watch the images with wide eyes. "What kind of beings?" "We called them the Eternals. They existed before the first stars were born. They will exist after the last star dies. They are neither good nor evil. They simply are." His form flickered again. "We wanted to communicate with them. We wanted their knowledge, their power, so we created the resonance, a signal that could reach across dimensions, a call that would bring an eternal to us. And it worked. It worked." His voice was heavy with old pain. "An eternal answered our call, but we were not ready for what we found. We tried to control it, to use it as a weapon against our enemies. We were arrogant. We were foolish." "What happened?" "The Eternal grew angry, and when an Eternal grows angry, worlds burn." Looked directly at. "The Empire fell in a single day. Billions died. Those few who survived sealed the book away and then took their own lives, hoping that no one would ever be foolish enough to read it again." Felt the weight of the book in her hands. It suddenly seemed much heavier than before. "And now I've started reading it." "Yes." "And if I finish, I'll summon another Eternal." "Yes." Was quiet for a long time. Above them, somewhere in the tunnels, she could hear faint sounds, voices shouting, machines digging. Her father was looking for her. The whole station was probably looking for her. But she could not leave. If she left, she would die. The library would die, and all the knowledge it contained would be lost forever. "I speak 9 languages," said quietly. "I've been studying for 2 years. My teachers say I'm the best student they've ever seen." She looked up at. "I'm not like other kids. I never fit in. I never had friends. The only thing I'm good at is reading and learning." Studied her with those strange, colorless eyes. "That is not enough. They were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Their greatest scholars attempted the resonance and failed. Maybe that's why they failed." Hugged the book closer to her chest. "Maybe they were too smart, too proud. They wanted to control the Eternals. They wanted power." She shook her head. "I don't want power. I just want to understand. I just want to learn." "And you think that will save you?" "I don't know." His voice was small but steady. "But I have to try. If I don't finish reading, I die anyway. At least this way there's a chance." Was silent for a long time. The lights in the library flickered and danced. Finally, the guardian spoke. "Very well, little human. Read. And may whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all." Sat down on the cold stone floor. She opened the book to the second page. The symbols there were already changing, rearranging themselves into patterns she had never seen before. She took a deep breath and began to read. Above the library, the world was falling apart. The moon's surface cracked like an egg. Ancient machines buried for 1,000 years began to wake up. They pushed through rock and soil, rising toward the sky like metal flowers. The mining station shook so hard that equipment fell from shelves and workers ran for safety pods. Did not run. He stood at the entrance to the excavation tunnels, screaming his daughter's name until his throat was raw. 2 other workers had to hold him back from going in alone. "The whole section is unstable," one of them said. "If you go in there, you'll die." "My daughter is in there," pulled against their grip. "YUNA." Emergency teams arrived with scanning equipment. They found the collapsed tunnel where had fallen. They found the hidden chamber far below. And they found energy readings that made no sense, power levels that should have been impossible for technology this old. "There's someone alive down there," a technician said, staring at her screen. "One human life sign and something else, something we've never seen before." Grabbed the screen from her hands. He looked at the tiny dot that represented his daughter, surrounded by swirling patterns of unknown energy. "Get me down there," he said. "I don't care how. Get me to my daughter." Far below was lost in the book. The pages changed with every turn. What started as written symbols became pictures, then sounds, then feelings that had no words. The book was teaching her, reaching into her mind and expanding it in ways she could not describe. She saw the birth of stars. She felt the death of galaxies. She experienced memories that belonged to beings who had lived and died before Earth even existed. Her head hurt, her nose was bleeding, but she kept reading. Watched from the shadows, her form growing more solid as the library's power increased. She had expected the human child to fail within minutes. Instead, had been reading for 3 hours and showed no signs of stopping. "How is this possible?" whispered to herself. "She is nothing, a child, an insect compared to the scholars who came before." But there was something different about the way read. The scholars had approached the book with hunger. They wanted to conquer its secrets, to tear knowledge from its pages by force. Read the way a child reads a bedtime story. She read with wonder. She read with love. The book responded to that love. Instead of fighting her, it opened itself to her. Instead of burning her mind, it guided her gently through its deepest mysteries. Turned another page and gasped. She was standing in space. Not really, she knew. Her body was still sitting in the library, but her mind was somewhere else, floating among stars that had no names, and she was not alone. Something moved in the darkness between the stars. Something vast and old, sleeping the endless sleep of beings who have no need for time. Could feel its dreams washing over her like waves on a beach. Dreams of the universe when it was young. Dreams of the first light. Dreams of things she had no words to describe. This was the eternal. This was what they had found. "Hello," said. The thing did not answer. It was not awake enough to answer. But she felt it shift slightly, like a sleeping person who hears a familiar voice. Back in her body, read faster. The book was nearing its end. The final chapters described the ritual that would complete the resonance, the words that would call the eternal fully into their dimension. It was written with fear. Every line warned of danger, death, destruction. The who had written these words knew they were creating something terrible, but noticed something they had missed. The ritual had 2 parts. The first part was the summoning, the call that would reach across dimensions. That was what they had focused on. That was where they had put all their skill and knowledge. The second part was smaller, almost hidden. A single paragraph at the very end that described what to say when the Eternal arrived. They had written words of command, words of power, words that demanded obedience. "That's wrong," said out loud. Her voice was hoarse from hours of reading. "That's all wrong." Appeared beside her. "What do you mean?" "Look," pointed at the symbols on the page. They wrote a command. They told the Eternal what to do, but you can't command something like that. It's like trying to command the ocean or the wind. "Then what would you write?" Looked at the page for a long moment. Then she picked up a small stone from the floor and scratched new symbols next to the old ones. Her hand moved without thinking, guided by instinct and 2 years of studying script. Read what she had written. Her colorless eyes went wide. This is not a command." "No," smiled, even though her head hurt and her nose was still bleeding. "It's a question." Above them, the ceiling began to shake. Dust rained down. The crystal pillars blazed with light so bright that had to close her eyes. She could hear her father's voice now, calling her name from somewhere far away. But she was almost done. She turned to the last page. The symbols there burned with cold fire. She could feel the Eternal stirring in its sleep, awakening for the first time in over 1,000 years. The head screamed at it. They had demanded its power. Took a deep breath and spoke the words she had written herself. Not a command, not a demand. A greeting. "Hello," she said in the oldest language in the universe. "My name is, I come from a small planet called Earth. I'm just a kid and I don't want anything from you. But I read your story and I thought maybe you might be lonely. I thought maybe you might want a friend." The universe held its breath. And then, for the first time in 1 billion years, the Eternal opened its eyes. The Eternal did not look like anything. It was too vast, too old, too different for eyes to see or minds to understand, but felt it looking at her. She felt its attention settle on her small human form like sunlight falling on a single flower in an endless field. For a moment nothing happened. The library was silent. The crystal pillars stopped glowing. Even the dust seemed to freeze in the air. Then the Eternal spoke. It did not use words. Words were too small for what it wanted to say. Instead, it sent feelings directly into its mind. She felt its confusion first, like someone waking from a long dream to find a stranger standing by their bed. Then she felt its memory of the fear and anger and pain of that first meeting. The Eternal had answered their call with curiosity, wanting to know these small creatures who had reached across the void. But the had attacked it with binding spells and commands, trying to chain a being that had no chains. The Eternal had not meant to destroy them. It had simply defended itself, the way a human might swat a fly that was biting them. It had never understood why they had been so afraid. And then it had gone back to sleep, sad and confused, wondering if it would ever meet someone who was not afraid. Felt tears running down her face. "I'm not afraid," she said. "I mean, I was scared at first, but I'm not afraid of you. I just wanted to understand." The Eternal's attention sharpened. It looked deeper into her mind, reading her memories the way she had read the book. It saw her lonely childhood. It saw her struggles to fit in with other kids. It saw her love for languages and books, and the way she found friends in stories when she could not find them in real life. And then it did something that had never given it a chance to do. It introduced itself. The Eternal's name was not a word. It was a feeling, a combination of warmth and light and the quiet joy of existing. It was the oldest being in the universe, born in the moment before the first star, existing in the spaces between dimensions. It had watched galaxies form and die. It had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. And in all that time, across all those years, no one had ever simply said hello. Until now. "Nice to meet you," said, smiling through her tears. "Would you like to hear about Earth? It's a really small planet, but it's pretty. We have oceans and mountains and trees, and we have books, lots and lots of books." The Eternal sent a feeling that was like laughter. It wanted to hear everything. Talked for a long time. She told the Eternal about her home, her school, her father. She told it about the books she loved and the languages she studied. She told it about being lonely, about feeling different, about the way reading made her feel less alone. The Eternal listened, and as it listened, something changed in the library around them. The crystal pillars began to glow with a soft, warm light. The dust settled. The shaking stopped. Energy flowed through ancient circuits that had been dead for over 1,000 years, bringing the library back to life. But that was not all. Across the galaxy, other lights began to wake. Hidden repositories that had been sealed since the fall of the Empire suddenly opened their doors. Guardian AIs stirred from their long sleep. Knowledge that had been lost for centuries became available once more. The Eternal was giving a gift. "I don't need a gift," said. "I just wanted to talk." The Eternal sent another feeling, something between gratitude and wonder. In all its endless existence, it had never met a creature quite like her. They had been brilliant but arrogant. Other species had been curious but fearful. Only this small human child had approached it with nothing but kindness and an honest desire to understand. The Eternal explained that it had to go back to sleep now. Staying awake in this dimension took too much energy, even for a being as old as it was. But before it left, it wanted to know something. It was not angry anymore. The pain of the betrayal had healed, thanks to her, and if she ever wanted to talk again, all she had to do was open the book and say hello. Then the Eternal closed its eyes and returned to its endless dream. Sat alone in the library, the book closed in her lap. She was exhausted. Her body ached. Her mind felt stretched in ways she could not describe, but she was smiling. That was how her father found her. Burst into the chamber with a rescue team behind him. His face was covered in dust and sweat, his eyes wild with fear. When he saw sitting peacefully on the floor, surrounded by glowing crystals and ancient technology, he fell to his knees. He pulled her into his arms so tight she could barely breathe. "I thought I lost you. I thought you were dead." "I'm okay," hugged him back. "I'm okay, I just made a friend." Pulled back and looked at her face. There was something different in her eyes, something old and wise and kind. "What happened? What is this place?" "It's the library of the real one, the one everyone's been looking for." Looked around at the endless shelves, the glowing pillars, the guardian AI watching from the shadows. "And I think I kind of saved the galaxy. By accident." Stepped forward. Her form was solid now, almost human. "Your daughter completed the resonance," she said too. "She did what the greatest scholars of the Empire could not do. She spoke to an Eternal and lived. More than that, she made peace with it." Stared at the glowing woman, then at his daughter, then back at the woman. "How?" Smiled, hugging the book to her chest. "I just talked to it. I introduced myself and told it about Earth and asked if it wanted to be friends." She shrugged like it was the most normal thing in the world. It said yes. In the months that followed, everything changed. The library of became the most important discovery in galactic history. Scientists and scholars came from every corner of known space to study its contents. The knowledge they found pushed civilization forward by centuries in just a few years. Became Earth's first alien ambassador. She found humans endlessly fascinating, especially their strange habit of approaching problems with emotion instead of pure logic. She and became close friends, spending hours discussing languages and history and the nature of the universe. And herself became famous, the youngest in galactic history, the girl who talked to gods, the human child who saved two civilizations by simply being kind. Years later, when reporters asked her how she had done it, how a 13-year-old girl had succeeded where an entire empire had failed, she always gave the same answer. "I wasn't trying to be a hero," she would say. "I wasn't trying to be special. I was just a lonely kid who really, really liked reading. And when I found someone else who was lonely too, I did what anyone should do." She would smile then, the same smile she had worn in the library all those years ago. "I said hello." And somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, an ancient being smiled back.